Dave Wilson, Trav Robertson, our insiders this evening. You guys were listening to the conversation about delegates here in South Carolina. Do you see any way at all that Nikki Haley is going to walk away with a delegate or two here?
I think she could pick up one or two, depending upon if she wins a congressional district. I don't necessarily think that she's going to. When we start taking a look at the numbers that are out there right now, I don't think the numbers are going to be there necessarily for her to be able to do any sort of picking up of delegates. That means Donald Trump has come into South Carolina and walked out with 50 delegates. If she wins none at all, that's a significant step forward. That puts him well over 110 delegates. And the math, folks at home, the math that you got to get for a win like this is 1,215 delegates. By the time we finish Super Tuesday, we will have had that many delegates at least awardable by the time we get 10 days from now. So it will not take that much longer, I think, for Donald Trump to sew the rest of this up and we start going home.
Well, and I find it interesting. We're talking about it. What's Haley's end game? She's vowed to stay in till Super Tuesday. Who's funding her effort now? I mean, if you're not winning delegates in a state like South Carolina, her home state, where's the promise of her doing any better on Super Tuesday?
But I think the change of that, though, Travis, you've got people right now who are wanting an alternative to Donald Trump still out there for people to be able to vote on.
Or do they think he's going to be convicted?
Well, there's always that part of it. But the other part of it is, JR, when you look at this, the way you campaign in these latter states is very different than here in South Carolina and the early states.
Haley's campaign manager acknowledging that the math here is challenging for their candidate to move forward. But what the campaign is saying is who can beat Biden in November? And they're saying that when you take the math out of the equation, Nikki Haley, they say, is better suited to go head-to-head with Joe Biden in November than Donald Trump. And they point out that the polling shows time and time again that Haley would win. So while they say the math is challenging, for whatever reason, they're saying they're moving forward and they're staying in
Well, here's the deal. The great thing about South Carolina's primary system is that it allows candidates to not only develop a message for their political and ideological base, but also one for a general election. And the fact is that Nikki Haley has put forward a general election narrative during this campaign in this state, and it still didn't help her win.
Well, it's very interesting because earlier this week, she had a press conference, kind of the state of the campaign, and there was this chatter among some folks, is she getting ready to drop out? Is she going to drop out in her home state? Nowhere near that.
Right.
But what ended up happening, if you watch the entire thing, it was a great setup, a great set with the media there for a set of television commercials, the first of which I saw Thursday night.
Exactly.
Right after the Insiders, it aired right here on the station, and it was the two grumpy old men spot with new audio from Haley's press conference.
All right, here's 5% almost reporting right now, and the numbers have kind of tightened up a little bit. Again, albeit with about 5% of the precincts reporting, 55-45 right now.
Is that that's the entire state?
That's the entire state.
If she can maintain that, she will consider this a win.
There's no doubt about that.
Because if she can close, all she's setting out to do right now is close the gap against Donald Trump.
If she hits in between 40 and 45%, it's a victory for her tonight. But like I said, we get focused on the percentages when we really should be looking at actual numbers and where those numbers came from in South Carolina.
Because Nikki Haley has got to start being able to pinpoint a message, get it out there. As we were saying a minute ago, JR, when you get to these other states, the Super Tuesday states, there's 21 other states that are getting ready to either have primaries or caucuses over the next 10 days. That's half of America will then have voted in a primary or a caucus leading up to the election.
And what did you say? We're 255 days until November.
Yes. I mean, the last thing, folks at home, that you really, you're sitting here going, are we going to welcome to the general election Groundhog Day of politics? Because that's what it's going to end up being. It's going to end up being this whole discussion for 255 days.
All right, so 205,000 South Carolinians cast ballots early in the South Carolina Republican presidential primary. That's far more than the people who showed up to vote in the Democratic primary 3 weeks ago.
Of course. I mean, you've got a contested Republican primary. I mean, that is something that is cyclical. It happens consistently. I mean, I think in 2016 we had 540,000 people participate. Conversely, the Republicans, I think, did not have a significant. They didn't even have a primary 2 years ago, or 4 years ago, rather. But anyway, that's something that changes. It's cyclical, and it's, I think, quite frankly, it's one of the great things about our state. It forces candidates to campaign in every nook and cranny of South Carolina. It forces them to not only develop a message for their political base, but also one for a general election.
And that is where we have consistently, as a state, kind of weeded out for the rest of America down to a very small group of people who will end up being the finalists for the nomination for both parties. I mean, we can probably now say, unless something miraculous happens over the next few weeks, that Donald Trump's going to probably end up winning the nomination. Joe Biden has won the nomination, and South Carolina will have 11 out of the last 12 presidential elections since 1980. South Carolina's first in the South primary has picked the presidential nominee for both parties.
And the president. I mean, that's one of the great things about our state is because of the makeup of the electorate here, because of the way we force candidates to campaign not in just urban but rural settings, it forces candidates to put together a campaign that speaks to a lot of voters, and that's why we've been successful in picking either the president or nominee.
You look back at 2008 with Obama. Obama comes into South Carolina down by nearly 30 points against Hillary Clinton. He had 90 staffers on the ground in 46 counties working it. Working the grassroots, and ended up flipping that number and wins South Carolina significantly in the 2008 election.
By 701, I mean, almost as early as tonight was called.
So how does Bobby Kennedy Jr. fit into all of this?
This is like Nikki Who? Yeah.
How does he figure into all this? If he gets on enough ballots in enough states, how does he figure into the race in November?
I don't think he's going to be a Ross Perot.
Or a Ralph Nader. I don't think he is. I think that the fact is when there is a serious examination of him, his personal life, and his past history, I think people are going to have enough questions. He's not going to get the groundswell of support that he thinks he's going to.
It took Ross Perot and his money and just this tenacity of the little old man from Texas to turn around, because he was so anti George H.W. Bush, Bush 41, that it was everything he could to break the Bush stronghold. And that's where Clinton, winning 40-something% of the vote, ends up becoming president of the United States.
That's not going to happen here.
Trav, we've been told we're expecting about 1 million people to have cast ballots across the state of South Carolina today. Democrats who did not vote in the Democratic primary 3 weeks ago, some admitting earlier in some interviews, they crossed over and voted today in the Republican primary here in South Carolina. Do you expect a lot of Democrats to have done that today?
You know, Dave and I were talking about that when we walked in. Everybody likes to use that as an argument for closing our primary system, but I've never seen that happen on a great scale. And I don't think that it's going to be the cause. I think that there are a couple of things here. One is I believe that Donald Trump's voters were actually motivated to vote. There was a question leading up into this election cycle whether you had 72 million people who weren't going to vote because they thought that it was going to be stolen anyway, or 72 million people who were going to be mad as hell and they're going to go vote. Dave pointed out we've also had a significant population increase of Republicans moving from blue states into red states like South Carolina and Texas, which is going to impact the number of people turning out here. And turnout's always higher when you have a contested primary.
And that's the facts. When you look at it, Nikki Haley leaves South Carolina about 7 years ago to go become ambassador to the UN. And in that time period, there has been a ton of in-migration into South Carolina. Nearly 1 million people have moved into our state in the last decade. That has changed the complexion of our state. It's you look at it, and this is how you can tell, folks, when you look at this at home, you look at the number of congressional seats that we actually have. We have 7 congressional seats. We used to only have 6. We're anticipating by 2030 we're going to have probably 8. And they're folks who are moving out of places like California and New York, Massachusetts, very strong blue states. There's this in-migration of people coming to South Carolina who are saying, I'm very interested in moving into this state because I want more conservative or Republican politics than what I have back in my old home.
And just look at the fact that you've seen a significant change in things like the blue laws in South Carolina in our lifetime.
Oh, yeah.
That is a direct result of an influx of people moving into South Carolina. And if you look at the map, in Horry County, you've got a significant origin of the Tea Party down in Beaufort and Bluffton.
But here's the interesting part on that, though, Trav. I think the interesting part of that is that's where the largest in-migration is
You're
happening.
exactly right. You're exactly right. And that's to my point. If you go up to the upstate, Anderson, Oconee, Pickens, Greenville, Spartanburg, you've got the old Southern Baptist, conservative, socially, fiscally conservative, but not the Tea Party Republicans. And then you get a mix down in Bluffton and the Ace Basin and whatnot. And I think those are interesting differences to note. And that influx of people moving here affect those various ideologies.
Nikki Haley wanted a debate with Donald Trump here in South Carolina. That debate never happened. As far as moving forward, if Biden and Trump represent their parties in November, will there be a Biden-Trump debate?
Well, I mean, the Presidential Commission sets those. That's an independent body. I don't see how they get around it. Do you?
I don't know that they can get around.
I don't think they can.
Then again, Joe Biden has yet to give a State of the Union speech this year either. And I think the thing that we have to start considering is the greater question I have is, if they do debate, will Trump have learned how to debate better than he did the first time?
All right, I want to hear from the former president. We have some comments from him just a short time ago. Then we're going to get reaction from you guys. Okay. Take a listen.
We have incredible friends, and we're going to be up here on November 5th, and we're going to look at Joe Biden, and we're going to look him right in the eye. He's destroying our country, and we're going to say, Joe, you're fired. Get out. Get out, Joe. You're fired. They're destroying our country, and we're going to, I just wish we could do it quicker. 9 months is a long time. I just wish we could do it quicker, Mr. Governor. I wish is there anything you can do with your vast powers to make that, in certain countries you're allowed to call your election date. If I had the right to do it, I'd do it tomorrow.
So there's the former president saying it's going to be the two of them on the ballot in November, and he's going to say, Joe Biden, you're fired.
Right. As we start looking at these numbers starting to come in, Nikki Haley's number is just continuing to drip further and further and further down.
44.5%, now it's 42.8.
And I think if what the predictions were actually do come out, then you're looking at the fact that Nikki Haley, if she drops below 40% in the vote, then she is definitely showing that even in her own home state, she can't let that momentum carry over to a big win.
Let me follow up on something that the former president just said. I want to ask you about it, Trav and Dave. He said they're destroying our country. Is he talking about Joe Biden and Democrats? What's he talking about?
I don't know who he's talking about, because I believe he is destroying our country. And I've got some very serious thoughts about it. I mean, he's under numerous investigations. He led a group of individuals who tried to overthrow our democracy. So I think don't have a problem debating him about that.
I disagree, and
That's
the reason
fine.
that I disagree is the fact that we have a very, very porous southern border right now. We had a murder that took place just yesterday, that included a person who had come into America illegally. You've got drugs flowing across the southern border illegally. You've got human trafficking coming across the southern border, and that has been left wide open.
Well,
and in so doing, millions of people, Trav, are coming across into America. And we've got, I heard this last night at the Black Conservative Federation dinner. We have people who are African American veterans who are living homeless, but we're giving illegal immigrants coming into America housing in sanctuary cities. There's a problem with that.
So Donald Trump controlled the United States Congress, the House, and the Senate, and he didn't fix it. So
Joe Biden made it worse?
Joe Biden and the Democrats and the United States Senator Langford from Oklahoma created a bill in the United States Senate just 2 weeks ago, and the Republicans killed it at the request of Donald Trump. That's a fact. That is a fact. We had a bill that would have helped solve this problem, and the Republicans sunk the bill because they didn't. No, listen to me.
I'll listen.
I'm not disagreeing with you about the problem. I'm saying that if it were such an easy fix, why in the hell didn't Donald Trump fix it when he controlled the House and the Senate and the presidency?
They were building a wall and they stopped.
That's right. You're right. He took money away from those veterans that you're so concerned about to build that wall. I forgot about that. You're right. He diverted money from the Department of Defense that went to things to help our military.
It is defense, Trav, when you put up a fence to keep people out. That's
the fact is
national
that Joe
defense.
Biden said 2 weeks ago, send me the bill, I'll sign it, and we will take care of this problem, and the Republicans killed it. That is a fact.
I find it very interesting, though.
Well,
the chief executive officer of the United States of America, which controls the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, and the Border Patrol. That's his job. He is the
Donald
chief
Trump couldn't get it done when he had the House and the Senate.
The chief executive officer.
But yet we're supposed to. Oh, that's right. Mexico was even going to build it, pay for it, but he didn't.
Joe Biden has a capability,
Donald Trump has not
of being able to deal with this.
Donald Trump did?
No. Joe Biden has an ability to use executive power, his job as the chief executive officer of the United States of America, to actually do something about the border issue instead of leaving it wide open.
Donald Trump
is not in the White House right now.
He had his
Joe
Republicans
Biden
kill the bill that would have fixed this problem 2 weeks ago.
What you're hearing here, this is conversations that's happening all across the country.
Right.
Families have families who disagree with each other, friends who disagree with each other. Some of the same things you're saying here that I hear in homes across the area.
I had a woman come up at a store the other day and said, for the first time ever, I understand what my husband and my father-in-law are talking about, because she watches us have these discussions. Because there are real issues that are out there that are very difficult to do in the 22 minutes of airtime that we have available for a newscast. When you're watching this and you're watching us have these discussions, you know you're having these discussions at lunch, you're having them at breakfast. You try not to have them at Thanksgiving, and you hope you don't have them at Easter. But they're going to happen. And when they do, you've got to be able to be informed on this. This is, if you want to talk about the threat to democracy, it's the fact that we've got to be able to have these kind of discussions and come up with real solutions. And you're right, there have been mistakes on both sides.
Hating
exactly.
Each other. I mean,
Trav and I have known each other for what, 30 years now, 35?
Well, I'm a little younger, but
I have better hair.
There's no doubt about
There's no doubt on that one. But these are JR, have actually been discussions. When we were in college, the college television station at Carolina.
That's right.
We had these kind of debates, and these are the types of things that when you can actually get past the issues and really start looking for solutions.
My dear friend Robert Cahaley and I debated every student organization at the University of South Carolina, and we're dear friends to this day.
Right.
And I do think that's a serious problem. I mean, there's such a vitriolic and hatred, and at times I've been part of that problem as chairman of a party.
Just now? I'm just kidding.
No. I was pointing out clear facts that Donald Trump, as president who controlled the House and the Senate, still couldn't get Mexico to pay for a border wall. Instead, he took the money away from veterans and tried to do something, but it didn't happen.
And so this is why we have these, this is what primaries are about. I had a very interesting interview with the folks from the BBC today.
And really?
Yeah. And I said, we do it differently in America than you do across the pond.
Right.
Because in America, we have a primary system. So here's your quick little civics lesson for those of you at home. We have Republicans and Democrats beat each other up on each of their parties to figure out who's going to be the person who's going to end up getting the nomination, and then we go beat up on each other this way.
And then we come together as Americans when we need to.
Right, and then the British system, they basically, once they figure out who's been elected, they then have to cobble together some form of government, and that's why they do things the way they do. But I think, JR, when we look at this is why the primaries matter. They matter because this is a place for you to actually vote on what you believe is your way of seeing America grow and change and have something happen. And that, when we have the wide open primaries like we had in 2008 and 2016, where you had 12, 15 people who were running for president of the United States, it's a lot of people having, a real debate on the issues.
And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of, it's really good for South Carolina. And I think that it is exceptional if the Republicans hit 1 million votes tonight. I think it's an exceptional opportunity for our state because, up until 2008, 2010, Iowa had the highest literacy rate than any country in America, and it was directly attributed to their role in the caucuses.
Right.
And I think that every election cycle we have, specifically presidential primary, it engages our voters and they become much more informed, more so than voters in other parts of our country.
All right. And to our viewers at home, let me tell you this. When I spoke with these two on the phone earlier this week about being here tonight, I know you were excited to be here because you knew Dave was going to be here. You guys get along all the time. Just so you guys know at home.
Oh yeah, I mean, we run into each other at lunch and have phenomenal conversations, and we hope that you're doing the same thing.
That's right.
All right, we're going to send